Welcome to Wrike 301 Advanced Features. In this video, we'll focus on functionality to help you better manage your projects and workloads. First, let's take a look at some additional use cases for dashboard widgets. We're here on the dashboard, and some of the preloaded widgets are really geared at those things that are applicable across the board. Everyone needs to keep an eye on tasks that are assigned to them that are due today or this week, overdue, an activity stream to see who's working on what, and even backlog tasks. But once your projects are set up, the dashboard can and should play a bigger role in your overall Wrike experience. One example, when I'm working as a project manager, there's a KPI, or key performance indicator, that I like to keep an eye on, specifically overdue milestones. Now, ideally, there should be none at any point, but I'm going to create a widget for this just to keep an eye on it. If I go into our company and identify my projects folder, I can then click on Show Descendants, click on the Task Digest here. Any part of this donut allows you to zero in on the filter's tasks, and then I only have to apply one other filter by task type. Now I've got my nice clean list, but as this is a preemptive widget, we're just going to click on the menu and add it to my dashboard anyways. I need to identify what this will be showing if and when it is populated. It's going to beat me to the dashboard, and as it's blank, and I hope it always stays that way, I'm going to go ahead and just shrink it down here so it stays nice and small. Now, one of the other default widgets that comes available on here is really geared at this type of project monitoring as well. It's called the Conflict Monitor. And what this is showing is anytime a planned task is pushed past its dependent milestone. Let's click on this particular one and go over to the timeline view that best illustrates what's going on. The dependency line is highlighted in gold, so it makes it really easy to identify. And as we can see, due date of this task is pushed past the milestone. This timeline is our Gantt chart, and it's a really fantastic visualization of your project and its schedule. The basics of this view are that your tasks flow from the upper left-hand corner to the bottom right, depending on scheduling. You can zoom out or in depending on the time frame that you want to see. The length of these bars is indicative of the task duration, and they are color-coded by status: complete, overdue, still active. Deferred would show up in purple, and canceled are grayed out. The arrows that we see here connecting our tasks are the dependency lines, and their main purpose is to dictate the sequencing so that our tasks can progress logically, usually from the start of one project all the way to the end. To create them in this view is super simple. It's via drag and drop, actually. If we hover over our Collect Topics and Agenda Items task, you'll see the arrow surrounded by the circle at the beginning and end. Simply click on one and connect it to the next task in line. This is a finish to start dependency, which is probably the most commonly used one, but we have all sorts of different ones as seen here, finish to finish, so you can create very intricate projects. Remember, these will dictate the flow and will really preserve it should rescheduling have to happen. If we decide that maybe this Collect Topics and Agenda Items task can't start until the following week, we'll see how the dependent tasks automatically move. What if this task were to take longer? We can extend the duration of it directly here, and again, we see the shift happen. Let's come back up and focus on this exception to the rule, though. Milestones, indicated by the little flags here, have kind of a unique characteristic because they're really meant to indicate landmarks in projects. Here it's the completion of maybe a particular phase. The ultimate completion of projects is another example of a perfect time to utilize milestones. Your projects may have contractual obligations or delivery dates. You may need prior authorization or approval even notifying a customer prior to moving those. So whatever the scenario, the milestones are really perfect for this because they're not going to move with the dependencies. Instead, it creates a conflict and requires deliberate action. I have to come in and physically reschedule this milestone. It's never going to move on its own. With this conflict in place, I have really two options. I can either move the milestone or move the confirming keynote speaker. Something has to give because as the current flow dictates, we won't be able to meet this deadline. I am pretty sure that Maggie, who's the assignee in this task, can finish this a bit earlier. So let's go ahead and push it. And as we can see, that eliminates the conflict. Now these can both be completed on the same day. Now, things do happen. Schedules have to change. So let's focus on some tips in order to make changes when they are going to affect more than one task in Wrike. We're going to swing back over to the list view. And let's look at our July conference project. Show descendants so we can look down at the tasks that are here. I'm going to say that some epic weather has come up that's going to result in us having to reschedule this project by a week. If I hover over a task in this view, you'll see the little checkbox that appears to the left of the avatars. Simply need to click on it or come up to the top and I can select all tasks. Once I click one or multiple, the mass actions are going to appear here to the far right. It lets me know how many tasks I've selected, thus which ones are going to be affected by my actions, and I've got multiple options. I could change the status. I could clear the dates, set these tasks as backlogged. I could schedule them all for a specific date. This advanced rescheduling holds my favorite feature and the one we're going to utilize here, shifting dates. Click on it and I can move all of these tasks forward or backwards by a set interval. In this case, we're going to do forward by 1 week. Hit reschedule. Now, this moves all of my tasks together. Of course, you actually have to hit the reschedule button. And then we'll have a little entry up here at the top that even lets me know when a mass action was done and provides an undo. Let's say another scenario. You may have a team member that unfortunately is leaving your team, maybe moving on to a different department. We'll say Vincent here. I can select both of the tasks that are assigned to him and actually swap a user. Change the tasks assigned to Vincent and instead replace him with Maggie. That saves me from having to do it at the individual level. In this case, it might be 2 tasks, but I'm sure you can think of different scenarios where maybe it would be in the hundreds. The mass actions really come in handy to allow you to do multiple edits to tasks, whether it's affecting the following, the sharing, the location, assignment, or scheduling, with minimal clicks. Now, as we were just speaking of team members, let's go over to the workload view. It's the one with the little person up here, and this one is really geared at identifying and tracking your resources. This view is going to help us see how we can make sure that no one person gets overloaded, and in fact, we're making the most use of the resources that we have available. I'm going to click on the projects here so we can look down at all of the scheduled projects currently. And as there's a bunch of tasks, it's just going to take a moment for them all to load up. We have the same color coding that's represented on the timeline view here, so we're looking at our completed, overdue, as well as active. The completed tasks really aren't consequential at this point, so let's just filter for active. This can note the times that team members might be stretched a little bit too thin, as well as those that we aren't taking advantage of. Utilizing the top level folder, this also makes it really helpful if you have shared resources that might be assigned across projects that you're not directly involved in. The orange highlighting that we see here is identifying when somebody is assigned to more hours of tasks than can be completed in a single day. Wrike's not going to stop you from scheduling as it likes to let managers be managers. I'm going to say here that I know that Charlotte's got a lot of personal stuff going on in addition to the multiple projects. So I think it's most conducive to ask Carrie to step in and take on that task. If you like to create projects and then delegate purely based on availability, this view is perfect as well. So there's a row down here for any unassigned tasks, which we could then pull in, reschedule, and assign as needed. Now, we've touched on full utilization of our dashboard view, how to ensure that your projects are going to move along in a nice, timely fashion, utilizing the dependencies and that conflict monitor, milestones appropriately, and even our workload view. The other view that I just want to touch on here is the table. So it's usually pretty homey for any Excel or MS Project users that are coming into Wrike for the first time. What we're going to see is a view very similar to Excel. Clicking on a higher folder here, you can see how the folder tree is actually displayed. We can expand and collapse it as needed, drag and drop and rearrange the columns, resize them of course. We can even click on the headers to do ascending or descending sorting. If you need to interact with any of the data here, simply double click on the cells. The one thing that I really like in this view that's quite unique to it is this idea of a duration for the folder. If we look at the 2014 All Hands meeting, I can see that from the start date of the first task to the due date of the last task is 57 days. Some of your projects may only require a handful of tasks that will only take someone a couple of hours to do, but they're actually stretched out over a longer period of time. So this really gives you a very accurate idea to the overall duration of how long a project is going to take from start to finish. The views that we covered today are the dashboard. We worked in the list as the mass actions are great here. The timeline, which is our Gantt chart, just looked at the table, and even the workload. You are now fully ready to dive into your projects armed with the reporting, monitoring, and planning tools needed to achieve success, aka meet deadlines. So now, go forth and complete.